Hola, welcome to my channel. In this video, I'd be ranting about this one here, iCue Commander Pro. I believe there's an XT there at the end. I'm not too sure. I'd be posting the exact name I bought, the name that comes with it when I bought it. And reason I bought this is the motherboard I have is an Asus TUF Z690 D4 Wi-Fi, and that motherboard doesn't have a temperature sensor header. So originally, the boards I had before, all of them have temperature sensors. I'm not too sure why this one here doesn't have one. Anyway, um, for the anyway, this one here comes with a SATA port there and a USB 2.0. There you have it. Anyway, my board doesn't have a sensor, and the fan controller I'm using just comes with multiple fan headers. This one here has 6 and an RGB header as well, controller for temperature ports, and 2 USB headers as well. Here at the back doesn't have any screw holes, so you'd only be able to mount this with tape. It comes with a package, so pretty neat. And that's about it. A manual, and yeah, took me a while to read those. I think the quality is not that good. I'm using QuickSync with OBS. I took this video with my phone, using my phone, and I'm editing it. I'm using the OBS to edit it. And here's the cable for the RGB. It's somewhat different from the regular RGB header we have in our motherboards. So if you're planning to use those kind of RGB headers, you'd need a special adapter cable. Anyway, and here are PWM extenders, 4-pin extenders. I'd be posting the length of that here in this video there. And 4 temperature probes. These are pretty cool actually. Yeah. Right now, 2 of them's attached to my VRM at the back of the board. Be careful of that wire there exposed. Make sure you put a thermal pad between your component and this sensor here. You don't want to short things out, And here's the thermal tape or temperature resistant tape. Do it like that. Make sure you have thermal pads in between again. And that's about it. Yeah, so now let me just set this computer up. I'd be showing you the fan curves and some stress testing. Give me a sec. So before I start the 10-minute stress test, let me just explain some of my settings here real quick. I have 2, 4, 10 fans installed. The iCue Commander Pro only takes in 6 fans per port, per header. You could actually split it to 2. I'm not really too sure what the load or the capacity of the load the header can take, but as I've seen in some other YouTube videos, some of them are splitting the header and they're able to get it to work. Thing there is, if you split the header there, you'd get the same power output. Like for example, you set one fan to 100%, the other fan will take in 100% or run in 100% speed as well. And other than that, no other special remarks. But what I did was, or rather is, I put one in or one fan in one header. So the 3 front fans are in headers 1 to 3, and the top fans for my top radiator is installed in the other 3. And the other 4 fans and the pump is installed into my motherboard. Now, as for the curves, the side mounted radiators have this front side both. This front side both is actually connected to my CPU header in the motherboard, and the CPU optional slave is slaved to this CPU header. As it turns out, with the Asus TUF motherboard, you can only control the CPU speed, and the other one's slave to that. It's that, or I haven't really looked into it. You may actually control it in the BIOS, maybe. I don't know. But as for Argus Monitor, if you control the CPU fan, the CPU optional slave to the CPU header, right? Now, as for the side-mounted radiator, I have the front-sided CPU fans, and the back side is for the chassis fan 1, chassis fan 2, the top and the bottom at the back of the side-mounted radiator. The thing here is this one here, the front side is an NZXT with a max 1200 RPM if I'm not mistaken, but the back side's 1800 RPM. Reason for this is the back side is a slim type of a fan, so the airflow is not really that much compared to the front side, if you know what I mean. So like for example, how I have this set up is the back side will run like 60%, while the front side's only running at 40%, you know, just to make things equal in regards to airflow, something like that. And yeah, as for the curves for the side mounted radiator, the curves or the temperature input is being taken from the GPU, CPU cores, and the Corsair Commander Pro. The Commander Pro, the temperature curve is set for the water temperature header. As I've shown earlier, the iCue Commander Pro takes in 4 temperature probes. What I have it set up as the temperature probe 1 is for the water, temperature probe 2 is for the VRM's 1 to 3rd phase, and temperature probe, the third probe is at the back of the VRM phases 4 to 7th. But I just put this back there just to test things out and compare them to my motherboard's VRM temperature, which is this one here. So if you could look at this one here, 48 degrees Celsius as an average, it's taking its average there. What I'm showing here is 49 and 48, so it's pretty similar. I'm planning to change this. Right now, I'm only using 3 probes. What I'm planning to do is for the second probe, I'm planning to put this at the intake part of the case to check the temperature of the air getting inside the case, and one more probe for the top radiator exhaust and another probe for the side radiator exhaust, so I'd be able to monitor temperatures fairly well in regards to, you know, the air coming in and out of the case. And yeah, going back, so the temperature curve is set for the H2O. I have multiple H2O temperature for various fans. I'd show them later on. So one sensor is being is being taken from the Corsair water temperature, and the other one is, or the other two is coming from the GPU and CPU. This one's important because, you know, I want to have some sort of an airflow inside the case, even at low temperature or low water temperature, you know. So here's the curve for my GPU, and for my CPU, here it is. And the continuous mode's running at 20%. Reason for this is I don't want the fans to you know, to run at 0 RPM or to stop. Reason for this is, I want to always have an airflow inside the case unless it's lesser than unless the water temperature gets lower than 36 degrees Celsius. If it's 36 degrees Celsius, the fan stops. But doesn't really happen. The coolest water temperature I'm getting with the system running is 38 degrees Celsius. So it's basically running at right now. It's running at 40%. And so those are for the side mounted radiator. And here's for the back side, also 20% continuous, or rather 10% in continuous mode for that one. And as for the pump is also installed into my motherboard. Reason for this is, well, I don't have enough port in the Corsair. So as for the pump, it only gets its reading from the GPU and the CPU. As you may know, the pump is not really affecting water temperature per se. It's really the radiators that has a lot to do with the water temperature, right? How many radiators you have installed, how big it is, As for the water pump, it really regulates the water temperature or the block temperature. So in my case, it'll be for the GPU and the CPU block. So there you have it. Here's the curve for that one. It's somewhat different from the other, other inputs. Like my curves for the front, for the side and top mounted radiator is different from my pump curves, So my pump doesn't run on 0 RPM. That's not a good idea. I let it run 30% continuously, regardless of how cold the water temperature gets. So 30% continuous mode. And here's for the CPU. So if my CPU gets more than 60 degrees, or rather, if my CPU temperature reaches 71 degrees Celsius, my pump speed runs at 60%, something like that. I haven't got it. It's really not a good idea to get your temperature way past 100 degrees unless you change, your BIOS setting, which is not a good idea. So, yep, that's my curve there. And that's for my pump speed. And as for my fans, remember I told you guys that my side-mounted radiator also acts as my airflow for the case, inside of my case, right? So doesn't really do much, or it won't really be that effective if there's no intake fans, right? Or intake or air intake, right? So for that, I added 2 more controllers for my front fans. Same inputs as my side-mounted radiator. I just added in the GPU and the CPU here. And as I've mentioned, once I install the VRM, or rather the 3 temperature for my airflow inside the case, maybe I'd be changing this one to air intake, and then air exhaust 1, air exhaust 2. And same goes for the side-mounted radiator. Again, for the airflow inside the case, all right? But as for the water temperature, it's the Corsair temperature reading that it's getting its information from. So here's the curve for this one here. For the front fans, it's somewhat different from the side-mounted radiator. This one here, it stops spinning at 35 degrees Celsius, and it starts to spin if it goes beyond 35, and gradually increases as temperature increases. Being a water temperature, the scope is somewhat limited. By every degree increase in the water temperature, I changed the fan speed, except for 44 to 40 46, I think, 47 degrees Celsius, where it runs at 70%. If it goes higher than that, it'll eventually reach 100% at 49 degrees Celsius. Yeah. And as for the top mounted radiator, I only get my sense, or it only gets triggered by the Corsair, only for the water temperature. Yeah, I don't want to keep all of my fans running to keep my negative airflow on the low side of things, you know. Too much negative airflow pressure, you know, on the case is not really a good idea in regards to, you know, handling the dust inside the case. So, and also, the my power supply also exhaust. My power supply is on the bottom side of the case, right? So if there's enough load, the power supply is actually exhausting some heat, and if the negative airflow inside the case is too high, it actually sucks the heat coming off from the power supply units. So that's not really a good idea. And yeah, so those are my fan curves and sensor readings or triggers. And the stress test that I'd be doing for 10 minutes is actually just Cinebench running for 10 minutes here with the Furmark running at 4K. Let me just and Furmark running in 4K. And I also installed my monitor. One of my monitors plugged into the iGPU, the integrated graphics of my processor, you know, just to make sure everything's running at maximum. Because if both my monitors are installed into my discrete card, the iGPU is really running at idle, and I want the iGPU to work as well. So there you have it. Now let me just run things up here real quick. So let me close this one here now, and let's start the GPU stress test. So I have this thing on 4K, not in full screen, and I don't want it to run in full screen because I'm having a hard time managing the windows here. And as for the settings, here they are: dynamic background, burn-in, extreme burn-in, and post FX. And yeah, okay. GPU stress tests running. So that's that. And next one here is the Cinebench. Let's start this one here. And then for monitoring, this one here as well. And where's this one here as well? I think that's about it, right? There you go. So everything's working pretty hard. Where's my water temperature? I forgot to show you guys this one here. iCue Commander Pro. Where is that? If you have it installed, you don't want to have that running if you have Argus Monitor running as well. So make sure you have that one closed and disable the automatic running of the application when Windows start, you know. And the other thing here to note is if you have hardware info, oh, here. Let's start with Argus Monitor first. So you want to go to Settings, and in Stability here, you want to check this one here, Corsair, AIO, and Fan Controller support, so that it can read the sensors off of your Commander Pro, right? And the other thing I want to point out with hardware info is this is the settings window for hardware info. Go to safety. you want to make sure Corsair Link and Aztec support is disabled, because if you enable this one, the information you're getting from the Commander Pro will be shown here in the hardware info sensor status, but it won't really be that accurate. Like, it'll show you 500 degrees Celsius off of your temperature probes, 5,000 RPM on your fans, which doesn't really make sense, and it's really obvious that it's a wrong indication. And also, if you have iCue Commander Pro with this option enabled, it'll keep on detecting and not detecting your fans, your probes, like that, right? So it really won't be stable. So if you have hardware info installed, make sure this one's disabled, all right? So that's basically it. And yep. If you notice here, I'm not getting any information off of my Commander Pro. That's because, again, the option's disabled. So let me close this one here. My fan is actually ramping up now. And I kept talking. You guys missed the slow, gradual increase of the RPM. But as you guys saw the curve I shown earlier, here, remember the curves at, it goes 100% at 49 degrees Celsius, right? So, but for the top radiator, it goes to 100 at 50 degrees Celsius. So, and everything's working. Yep. Let's put this one here. So the integrated graphics card working, everything's working. This one, the GPU, my GeForce or my 3090 is not really working that hard because, number one, a lot's running, right? And the other reason is because of my iGPU. Technically, well, not technically, I'm basically running multiple GPUs right now, which isn't really a good idea, guys. If you're planning to do this one here, no, just no. Don't use it, especially if you're going to be using your computer for gaming. It's not really a good idea. If you only have one monitor, make sure you plug that into your discrete card, not into the iGPU, because it'll split the resources. You'd end up having worse, not really bad, but worse performance, because, the system is trying to control the discrete card off from another controller, which really, decreases performance. So just leave the iGPU alone. You can have it remain enabled, yeah, because actually I'm recording this through OBS right now using QuickSync. So yeah, and basically, if you have your monitor running onto your iGPU, it's not really a good idea. Yeah, you save a bit of power, but in the long run, it's pretty much the same. It'll be the same in the end, in the long run. Yeah, so let's just wait for this to finish. And basically, my water temperature, if you notice here, my pump stays at 60%. My water temperature stabilizes at 48, 49 degrees Celsius regardless of the duration. I tried running OCCT power test on this thing for like 2 hours, I think, or 3 hours, something like that. And my temperature doesn't go beyond 50 degrees Celsius. Like, it'll hit 50 degrees Celsius real quick, but it'll go back to 48 degrees, and it'll just, swing up and down. It's basically because of the top fan. It'll ramp up to 100%, then it'll lower back to 80%. What's nice with Argus Monitor is the ramping up and down. You can really control that as well. If you could look here. Advanced fan parameters. Maximum increase of control value per second is 1%. So the fan speed will just change 1% at a time, you know, per second. Yeah. But yeah. What I really like with iCue Commander Pro is, again, my motherboard doesn't have a temperature probe. So my water temperature for the loop, I'm not able to, you know, trigger my fans by that. And your fans, it's really hard to control your fans if the trigger's only coming off from your GPU, CPU, VRMs. It's not really ideal because, again, as I've mentioned, the water temperature is being regulated by the radiators. It's the pump that could regulate temperature better for your blocks, and not having the tool or the resources to monitor your water temperature is not really a good idea. Well, you can still run your loop, you know, but I find this more efficient, you know, because in a normal gaming session, during a normal gaming session, my water temperature only stays around 42, 41 degrees Celsius, and it's easier for me to keep that temperature with the right amount of fan speed, you know, like for example, if at 41 degrees Celsius, I only need like 40% on my top fans, and like I think it's 60% for my front fans. It's 40% for the top radiator because I also have side mounted radiator, right? But the side mounted radiator, yeah, these fans are actually running at 80, 100%, I think, but they're pretty silent because this one's NZXT and this one's a slim fan that's you know, it's really not that noisy. And yeah, in regards to controlling the noise the fans produce, having a water temperature sensor in the loop and being able to regulate your fan speed using that is really a nice thing to have. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, so we're about to finish the test here. This is weird. The if I'm only running Cinebench, I believe the top temperature I'm getting is 90, low 90s for the Core 5 and 7. The Core 3 is only getting around 90 degrees Celsius. I'd be making a separate video actually. Okay, it's done. Let's wait for the rendering to finish. I'd be making a separate video where I'd be using the locking mechanism, the one I got from Thermalright. I'd be trying that one out with my 12900 case. Let's see if the locking mechanism with the ILM, the stock ILM and the Thermalright ILM, let's see if that makes any difference. Let's see if the temperature will improve if I use the Thermalright one. Anyway, the test's done. Let me close this real quick. This one's really low, and this is the second video I took already. The one I got earlier is pretty high, actually, higher than this one. And yeah, spoiler alert, the Cinebench score I'm getting without Fairmark running in the background is around 27,200 for Cinebench R23. And for the 4K here, no, this is low. Right now I'm only getting 50 degrees, or rather 50 FPS on my 4K. But again, this is running with the iGPU. So that's the performance decrease I'm getting. I'm averaging 67, 80 80 FPS on Firmark, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, now I'm down to 50. So that's that. So yeah, takeaway here. If you have a discrete card and an iGPU in your system, just use the discrete cards display outs. And yeah, going back, iCue Commander Pro, it's really nice thing to have in regards to temperature sensor. Again, my motherboard's Asus Z690. But if you have a motherboard that has temperature probe header, and you have a fan controller, fan controllers are really cheap. They're really cheap. This Commander Pro is like, I got this for 3,000 pesos, I think. That's $50, roughly. $50, $70. It's pretty expensive. But for me to be able to get a water temperature probe header, I think it's pretty good deal. Like, I wouldn't buy a new motherboard just for the temperature header, right? So for that, yeah, it's pretty good. And I'm able to control it fine with my Argus monitor. But if you have a temperature probe in your motherboard, that's enough. Just buy a very cheap fan controller and use Argus monitor for that. I think that'll work as well. Yep, that's it for this video. I hope you guys liked it, and it's of some help to someone out there. Yeah, as always, see you in the next one.